Welcome to our analysis of federal bureaucrats. Political scientists distinguish among national bureaucrats according to several factors, including the process by which they are hired, the procedures by which they can be fired, and the grounds for which they can be fired. On the basis of these factors, we can differentiate among three categories of national civilian bureaucrats: political appointees, civil servants, and senior executive service employees. In 1863, President Abraham Lincoln, suffering from smallpox, told his secretary, "Send all the office seekers in here. I finally have something I can give to them all." Indeed, before the creation of the civil service system in 1883, presidents had the authority to hire bureaucrats, selecting whomever they wanted and establishing whatever qualifications they desired, in a non-competitive hiring system known as patronage. Under the patronage system, hordes of men seeking government jobs presented themselves to the president after each election. Every 4 years after the presidential election, the federal government publishes the Plum Book, which lists thousands of top jobs in the bureaucracy to which the president will appoint people through the patronage system. As we've seen, there is no standard process for assessing the knowledge, skills, and ability needed for appointive positions, nor is there open competition for these patronage jobs. Further, because citizens expect presidents to be responsive and accountable to them, and presidents rely on their political appointees to support their efforts to meet those expectations, presidents tend to appoint people who support their policy preferences at these top positions. Patronage positions come with a downside for the appointees: no job security. The president not only hires, but also can fire political appointees at his pleasure. More common than firing is the resignation or retirement of appointees who no longer enjoy presidential approval. During the first century of U.S. history, all national bureaucrats got their jobs through patronage. Then, in 1883, mobilized by the assassination of President James Garfield, whose brief administration lasted from March to September 1881, by an unsuccessful seeker of a patronage position, Congress and President Chester Arthur, 1881 to 1885, approved the Pendleton Service Act. This law introduced a merit-based civil service system to the national government. The hiring principles of the merit-based civil service system are open competition, competence, and political neutrality. Civil servants are bureaucrats hired through the merit-based personnel system. The 1978 Civil Service Reform Act reinforced these merit principles and legislated the right to unionize for many federal civil servants. We'll examine that in a minute. Today, merit-based civil service jobs, which compose at least 85% of the national bureaucracy, are open and accessible to all who wish to compete for a position. The competition requires the candidates prove their competence to do the job, their merit. Jobs covered by the merit-based civil service system are analyzed and ranked on the basis of the knowledge, skills, and abilities needed to do the job competently. A job's rank determines its salary. The pay scales offer equal pay for jobs of equal worth, as determined by the job analysis. If you look at this table, it shows the pay scales and education requirements for white-collar government jobs. On the left is from 2009, and that chart gives you the salary ranges plus the qualifying education. The chart on the right is updated for the 2013 salary ranges with the same qualifying education. Several national laws have helped to make today's civil servants as a group look more like the U.S. population at large than they did in the past. Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, as amended, prohibits employers, including the government, from making personal decisions based on factors irrelevant to job competence, such as sex, race, color, ethnicity, age, and disabilities that can be reasonably accommodated. The merit principles of the 1978 Civil Service Reform Act reiterate this prohibition against discrimination in personnel practices. The bans against discrimination in Title VII and the CSRA, or Civil Service Reform Act, do not apply to the positions of elected officials or political appointees. Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, and ethnicity in educational opportunities offered by institutions receiving federal funding. Title IX, which was added to the Act in 1972, extended this prohibition to sex-based discrimination. Enforcement of these laws has increased the diversity of people who are able to gain the education and experience needed to do government jobs competently. The interactions of Title VI, Title VII, and Title IX has fostered greater descriptive representation among civil servants than among any other category of government worker. This means that the people serving resemble the larger population whom they serve in demographic characteristics such as race, age, ethnicity, sex, religion, and economic status. Merit-based civil servants cannot be fired merely because someone with different political beliefs is elected or appointed to supervise them. They can be fired for poor quality of work, or for non-performance of their work, or for violating the rules or regulations that guide their work. The system thus gives civil servants job protection and does not require them, unlike political appointees, to adhere to the president's policy preferences. Hence, the civil service system supports political neutrality to ensure efficient and effective public service delivery. In 1939, Congress approved the Hatch Act, limiting civil servants' rights to engage in political activity. Remember, we studied that earlier this year. The rationale behind this law's passage was that if civil servants stayed out of politics, they would be less inclined to allow party loyalty to influence their job performance. Over time, however, civil servants have contested the constitutionality of the legal limits on their political engagement. As a result, the Hatch Act has been modified in the last few decades to loosen the restrictions on civil servants' political activities. This easing of limits on political engagement has allowed civil servants to exercise their First Amendment rights of expression, including political expression, more freely and fully. There is widespread criticism of federal government performance, that public suspects that there are too many government workers, that they are underworked, overpaid, and insulted from the consequences of incompetence. With these words, President Jimmy Carter, 1977 to 1981, announced proposed civil service reforms in 1978. The resulting Civil Service Reform Act of 1978, or CSRA, reaffirmed and expanded the merit principles established by the Pendleton Act and reorganized the management of the National Civil Service. Carter's reforms also eliminated the Civil Service Commission, or CSC, the central personnel office created by the Pendleton Act. Three new administrative independent agencies, the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, the Merit System Protection Board, or MSPB, and the Federal Labor Relations Authority, or FLRA, replaced the old Civil Service Commission. Today, the OPM is the Central Personnel Office, responsible for developing and implementing merit-based civil service personnel policies and procedures. The MSPB ensures proper implementation of the merit system. The CSRA also legislated for the collective bargaining rights, unionization rights, of national service civil servants and created the FLRA to monitor the relations between unionized bureaucrats and the federal government. 28% of U.S. federal civil servants belong to labor unions. The American Federation of Government Employees is the largest such union, representing 600,000 national bureaucrats. The level of union membership varies dramatically from agency to agency, whereas about 90% of U.S. Postal Service employees are union members. The level of union membership among bureaucrats in the State Department is close to zero. Part of the explanation for the range of unionization level across national agencies is the percentage of each agency's workers that is composed of blue-collar workers. In general, blue-collar workers are likelier to be union members than are white-collar workers. Unionized civil servants have leverage to negotiate certain conditions of work. For example, they may bargain for improved training opportunities and enhanced due process protections in disciplinary matters. National civil service employee unions cannot negotiate salaries or work hours, however, and unlike private sector unions, national civil servant unions do not have the legal right to strike. The prohibition of strikes by national civil servants is typically justified by the fact that these workers provide essential services that are vital to public safety. A strike by these workers would therefore threaten public safety and health. One additional CSRA mandated change to the national bureaucracy was the creation of a new category of civil servant, the Senior Executive Service Bureaucrat. SES, Senior Executive Service, positions are hybrids of political appointee and civil service positions. The SES includes most of the top managerial, supervisory, and policy positions that are not patronage positions. At least 90% of SES bureaucrats are career civil servants, hired through an open competition based on competence, who have given up some job security for positions with higher pay. These employees can be moved from job to job and from agency to agency, less job security, but they are immune from firing except for proven misfeasance, nonfeasance, or malfeasance. Let's review what those words are. Misfeasance is for when you are fired for poor work quality. Nonfeasance is non-performance of their work, or malfeasance is violating the rules or regulations that guide their work. The remaining SES bureaucrats are typically hired from outside the merit-based civil service system. Appointed with approval of the OPM and the White House Office of Presidential Personnel, these SES non-career bureaucrats do not face open competition and do not have the job protection of merit-based civil servants. Supplementing the work of national political appointees, civil servants, and the SES bureaucrats are armies of state, local, and shadow bureaucrats, which we'll discuss further in the next Prezi. The volume of national public policy executed by these non-national bureaucrats has been increasing dramatically since the 1960s because of the devolution and a rise in contracting out.